From the National Weather Service in Raleigh, it's Nick Petro with a brief round of mixed wintry precip expected this evening through tonight for areas along and north of the I-885 and northern I-95 corridor across central North Carolina. So this is a winter weather briefing for central North Carolina. We do have winter weather advisories across a large portion of the western Piedmont, up near the Virginia border, and winter storm warnings in the higher elevations. So anyway, this is yet again another winter weather event over the weekend, and let me switch to current conditions just to kind of start us off that way. Now, I will point out that clearly temperatures are fairly warm, right? You see a bunch of 50-degree readings. Those numbers there are current temperatures over the Carolinas here, and the green. You see a lot of green here. Well, that essentially what we're looking at. That's essentially we're almost like looking at water up in the clouds. This is not reaching the ground. And I'll tell you how far south you got to go to find it where it's reaching the ground. You got to go basically down to Columbia, South Carolina, or maybe the upstate of South Carolina before it finally moistens up enough to reach the ground. Now, I will point out that that is thanks in large part to these dew point values, right? The dew point here are in the teens. You could see 17 at Greensboro, 18 at Winston-Salem, 25 at Sanford, 24 at RDU. These are dew points, right? So dew point is basically an indicator of moisture. So when the dew point and the temperature match, then basically the atmosphere is saturated, or we have 100% relative humidity. So one of the reasons why you're probably wondering, well, gosh, how could we get a winter weather event when we have temps in the 40s and close to 50? And thanks in part to, there's a variety of reasons, but one of the reasons is because of how dry the atmosphere is over us right now, with dew points in the mid-teens in some cases, in upper teens and lower 20s. What happens when moisture falls into very dry air, the process of basically of liquid water evaporating results in a cooling process. So as the dew point comes up, and as precipitation falls into dry air, the dew point comes up, but at the same time it cools the atmosphere and cools the temperature. So anyway, needless to say, the setup is there for once this precipitation eventually does reach the ground, it's going to start as rain across the western Piedmont, but ultimately there'll be enough cooling going on to allow for a changeover to some wintry, precip types, maybe some sleet, maybe some snow. We'll get into those details here in just a minute. So what are our main hazards? Well, it's a wintry mix, maybe some snow, a rain-snow mix, or mostly snow this evening, trending to mostly rain, like late. When we say late tonight, we mean like toward daybreak. So basically it's going to start out as rain, go to snow, and then possibly go back to rain before it all ends. And slushy snow accumulations on grassy areas, particularly maybe around an inch in the western northwest triad. Some sleet can mix in mainly this evening. So we're talking about a triad event, and perhaps up to Person County. The county is up near the Virginia border, and that again this evening into early overnight. And if you're wondering, well, what about road conditions? At least further west where the snow is deeper, obviously that's a different situation. But in central part of the state where, temperatures are warm, we could see a light coating of slushy snow on roads where it does snow. But since temperatures are expected to remain near or maybe even a degree above 32, when like when it snows and it's 32, 34, or 33, 34 degrees and snowing, well, that helps prevent, widespread, icy problems or maybe even subsequent black ice problems. So anyway, warm temperatures are once again going to help us and keep things from getting too terribly bad. And again, that's for areas north of 85, far northern I-95 corridor, up near the Virginia border and the Triad. So anyway, this graphic here sort of shows the depiction of how this is all expected to play out. Again, the upper left is live radar. I captured this here just a short time ago. And what you see there, the green, those initial radar returns are not reaching the ground. There is rain up there, but it's just evaporating before it hits the ground. But eventually, precip will lift north. It will hit the ground, and it'll start out as rain when it enters central North Carolina. But eventually, as the atmosphere cools, then we'll see a changeover to snow. And it's hard to say exactly where that changeover line will be. We always reference, I-85 and points north, but, it could slip a little bit further south of 85, like particularly northwest Chatham, Randolph County, maybe getting into far northern Stanley County. But for the most part, along and north of 85 will be the issue area. And then eventually that'll spread eastward. So that's why we're saying the northern I-95 corridor, because if this rain snow line here plays out in this fashion, we're talking basically, again, areas along the 85 corridor, and then including the northern I-95 corridor overnight tonight. So, again, this rain snow line could be, it could be, I would say there's a better chance that it will be further west than it will be further east. If you're thinking, well, gosh, what if this line is off by 50 miles either way? I think there's a better chance this line may be off in terms of being further west than further east. Okay. So anyway, that's kind of what I'm thinking. And again, northern I-95 and north of 85 obviously will have the best chance. And then by daybreak, there might be just enough, kind of slowdown in precip rates where those temperatures that are hanging out in the low 30s, 33, 34, might just allow everything to become back to rain before it ends. And then we'll get a break, and then there might be one little last final batch, one little effort of some very light snow to swing across the northern counties up near the Virginia border as colder air rushes in. Again, this shouldn't really amount to much, if anything. So we'll say rain and snow will exit to our northeast by noon Sunday, and then sunshine will break out after that, which will help to quickly melt anything that has accumulated. All right. So looking at how much snow that we expect, again, this is the most likely scenario, and we're talking snowfall amounts that could approach 1 inch, but generally staying below an inch, up basically from Roxborough to Greensboro to Winston-Salem, maybe northern Davidson County. The southern edge of this area will have very, very light accumulations, if any, on the grass. The most likely place to see any kind of slushy accumulations will be, again, along and north of the I-85 corridor. Okay, and it could get into the northern I-95 corridor in terms of less than an inch. Now this is the most likely scenario. We always like to show a kind of high-end or worst-case scenario just in case. Oops, sorry about that, went the wrong way. This is sort of the high-end scenario, or perhaps the worst-case scenario. And the only difference here between the most likely and the high-end is just a little bit higher amounts, maybe in northwest triad, maybe up toward Roxborough could see 1, maybe 1.5 inches. And then we could see, again, worst case scenario would mean maybe a very light dusting on the grass a little bit further south, maybe clipping northwest Wake County, maybe clipping northwest Chatham County, maybe a little more in Randolph County, and maybe even just a very light coating in northern Stanley County. And then, of course, I always want to point out that, the northern I-95 corridor oftentimes sees a period of cold air and sometimes can get into those grassy, slushy accumulations. Okay, so again, I think this general corridor right in here is the portion across central North Carolina that will have the best chance to see any kind of slushy, accumulations. Very, very kind of generally light. Okay. So anyway, that's the way we see things shaping up. So again, confidence is always with these types of events when we head into it warm. Again, remember, we always like to, for a really big winter weather event in here, we need the cold air here first. And we're going into this event once again warm, which is not what you want for a big winter weather event here in the Central Carolinas. Okay, so confidence is moderate. And again, the most likely scenarios, areas along and north of 85, we'll see a mix of, rain and snow, and then back toward rain, back toward, toward daybreak. Some sleet can mix in at times, light slushy snow accumulations, mainly on grassy areas. Let's figure about an inch of snow, highest in the Triad, maybe up near the Virginia border. Again, this will be late this evening into the overnight hours into Sunday morning. And then we expect everything to end by noon Sunday, and then temperatures hovering around or maybe even a degree or two above freezing tonight. So roads, although they might develop a light coating of slushy snow, again, especially on bridges and elevated roads, we expect it to be slushy enough and warm enough to preclude any major travel impacts, okay? And then because of that, we expect any black ice problems to be limited as well, all right? And then south of 85, you could see a few wet snowflakes mix in at times, even across the Triangle region and maybe the northern coastal, the northern Sandhills region. Could see a few snowflakes mix in at times, but we expect this to be a mostly rain event with no road or travel problems expected there. Okay, again, don't be surprised if there's a brief period of sleet. Okay, and then the high-end scenario would mean just a little bit higher amounts, maybe up to 1 to 2 inches. Along and north of 85 and in the northern I-95 corridor. All right. So that's kind of how we expect this to play out. There again is your timing. Again, this will be starting out as rain, switching and mixing with and switching to snow during the overnight hours. And again, mainly, along and north of I-85 and maybe getting into the northern I-95 corridor. All right. And this is probably I'll just leave up the high-end scenario because, the high-end scenario isn't much more than the expected scenario. Okay. So anyway, with that, that wraps up this briefing. And this will be our one and only live webinar for this particular winter weather event. Thanks so much for joining. And you can always obviously see updates on our website at weather.gov/Raleigh.